It's 2014 in the morning. You're lying in bed, perfectly comfortable, phone face down, eyes closed. Sleep is right there. You can feel it. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, your brain goes, "Hey, remember that time in 7th grade when you called your teacher mom?" You are now wide awake, staring at the ceiling, reliving a moment from 14 years ago in HD. Here's the thing. You didn't ask for that memory, but your brain, which cannot remember where you put your keys this morning, has flawless 4K footage of every cringe moment you've ever lived through, and it plays them for you, at night, on purpose. Today, we're figuring out why your brain hoards embarrassing memories, like collectible trading cards, and why this whole system might actually be helping you. Let's get into it. Start with the scene of the crime. It's late, the lights are off, your body is still. That stillness is the problem. During the day, your brain is busy. Emails, traffic, TikToks, your boss's weird tone in that one message. There's a constant stream of input, and your attention has somewhere to go. At night, all of that stops, and your brain, a prediction machine that hates having nothing to do, starts rummaging through its own filing cabinet for entertainment. This is called the default mode network. It's a set of brain regions that light up when you're not focused on the outside world. Neuroscientist Marcus Raikla first described it in the early 2000s, and it turns out this network is basically your brain's screensaver. Except the screensaver is you, your memories, your worries, your imagined futures, your replays of the past. And your brain doesn't pull up memories evenly, it pulls up the loud ones, the emotionally charged ones, the ones tagged with a big red flag that says, "I'm important, do not forget." Guess which memories those are? Here's where it gets interesting. There's a small almond-shaped structure in your brain called the amygdala. Its whole job is to slap emotional labels on your experiences. When something embarrassing happens, the amygdala goes into overdrive. It grabs the moment, dips it in emotional superglue, and hands it to your hippocampus for long-term storage. Neutral memories, like what you ate for lunch on a Tuesday, don't get this treatment. They fade. Emotional memories get preserved with unusual detail. Psychologists call these flashbulb memories, a term coined by Roger Brown and James Kulik back in 1977. Your brain treats "I tripped on stage at the 8th grade talent show" with the same filing priority as "I heard the news that changed the world." That's not a bug, that's a feature, a very annoying feature. Now let's talk about why it happens at 2 a.m. specifically. At night, your cortisol levels are supposed to drop. But if you're anxious, burned out, or you had caffeine at 4 p.m. like a fool, cortisol stays elevated. Elevated cortisol makes your brain more sensitive to threat. And to your brain, an embarrassing memory is a threat, a moment where you looked weak or dumb or rejected. Social pain lights up the same brain regions as physical pain. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger showed this at UCLA in 2003. She had participants play a virtual ball-tossing game in a brain scanner, and when they got excluded, their brains lit up in the same regions that process physical injury. Getting left out of a game with strangers registers to your brain like getting hit. Now imagine what "I waved back at someone who wasn't waving at me" does. Think about it. For most of human history, being kicked out of the tribe meant you didn't eat, didn't reproduce, and probably died alone. So your brain evolved an alarm system. Any moment where you might have lost social standing gets flagged as high priority. That system is still running. It has no idea you live in an apartment now. It doesn't know that the barista who heard you say "you too" when they said "enjoy your meal" doesn't remember you at all. Your brain treats that moment like a survival threat and files it under "study this," so it never happens again. At 2 a.m., when there's nothing else to think about, it opens the file. Here's the part that should bother you. Your brain isn't just replaying these memories, it's rehearsing them. Every time you pull up a memory, you're not opening the original file. You're opening a copy, and when you close it, you save the copy back, sometimes with small edits based on how you feel now. This is called memory reconsolidation, pioneered by neuroscientist Kareem Nader in the early 2000s. Memories aren't fixed recordings. They're more like documents you keep resaving. So every time you lie in bed and cringe about that thing you said at your cousin's wedding, you're actually strengthening the memory. You're basically going to the gym for that specific embarrassing moment, which is why the same three memories keep showing up on rotation. You've trained them. Congratulations. Now meet your inner critic. Psychologists sometimes call this the internal spectator. It's the part of you that watches your own behavior from the outside and grades it. And that spectator is harsh. Research by social psychologist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell showed something called the spotlight effect. In a 2000 study, he had college students wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room full of peers, then asked them to guess how many people noticed. The students guessed about half. The actual number, around 20%, and even the people who noticed didn't really care. We massively overestimate how much other people are paying attention to us. From your perspective, you're the main character, but everyone else is starring in their own movie and you're barely an extra in theirs. The person you're cringing about at 2 a.m., they forgot about it by 2005 that same afternoon. Let's zoom in. The memories that come back aren't just embarrassing. There's specific kinds of embarrassing. Moments where you thought you were being one thing and got proven wrong. You thought you were cool and weren't. You thought someone liked you and they didn't. Psychologists call this a violation of self-concept. Your brain has an internal map of who you think you are, and when reality contradicts that map, it flags the moment for review. It's basically your brain saying, "Hey, we thought we were the kind of person who doesn't trip going upstairs. Turns out we are." Updating file. The review happens at 2 a.m. Here's a fun one. The waiter. You go to a restaurant, the waiter brings your food, says, "Enjoy your meal." You say, "You too." You are now thinking about this at night. 6 years later. Why does this specific type hit so hard? Because it's a moment of automatic behavior gone wrong. Your brain has scripts for common situations, and those scripts usually run in the background. When one glitches, your brain wants to know why. So it studies the moment, over and over, looking for the bug in the code. The problem is, there is no bug. You said a normal thing at a slightly wrong time. But your brain doesn't know how to shrug. It only knows how to analyze. Let's talk about the group angle. A lot of your worst 2 a.m. memories involve other people watching you. That's not an accident. Humans are what evolutionary biologists call an ultra-social species. We survived because we cooperated, and cooperation required constantly monitoring our status in the group. Psychologist Mark Leary developed sociometer theory in the 1990s. His idea is that your self-esteem isn't really about how you feel about yourself. It's a gauge that measures how accepted you think you are by other people. When you embarrass yourself in front of a group, your sociometer takes a hit, and your brain keeps checking the gauge, especially at night when there's nothing else to check. Here's another twist. The memories that come back aren't just from last week, they're from 3rd grade, from your first job, from that summer camp thing when you were 11. Why does old stuff resurface? Because your brain organizes memories by emotional theme, not by date. When you feel a certain kind of vulnerable, say tired and quiet and alone, your brain reaches for other memories tagged with the same feeling. This is called mood-congruent memory, studied extensively by psychologist Gordon Bauer in the 1980s. So when you're lying in bed feeling slightly anxious, your brain doesn't pull up the time you nailed that presentation, it pulls up every time you felt small, in chronological order, starting from age 6. Thanks, brain. There's another player, sleep itself, or the lack of it. When you're sleep-deprived or on the edge of sleep, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles logic and emotional regulation, starts to power down. It's going offline for the night. But your amygdala, the emotion factory, is still running full blast. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker at Berkeley has shown that sleep-deprived brains show significantly more amygdala reactivity than well-rested ones. Translation: when you're tired, your emotional brain is louder, and your reasonable brain isn't there to argue with it. So a memory that would feel mildly awkward at noon feels catastrophic at 2 a.m. Same memory, different volume. Let's talk about the cringe itself, that physical feeling, the tightening in your chest, the wince, Maybe an actual audible no that escapes your mouth in the dark. That reaction is called vicarious embarrassment. Researchers Serdan Kroc and Frieder Pallas published work in 2011 showing that watching someone embarrass themselves activates the pain matrix in your brain, the same network involved in feeling physical pain. When you cringe at your past self, your current self is basically an observer feeling secondhand embarrassment for a stranger who happens to share your face. So you're not just remembering the moment, you're getting embarrassed all over again as an audience member watching a home movie. 2-for-1 deal. Great value. Here's something people don't talk about enough. The memories that haunt you at 2 a.m. are almost always memories where nothing bad actually happened. You didn't get fired. You didn't get punched. You didn't ruin anyone's life. You just said a slightly off thing or walked into a slightly wrong door. The consequences were tiny, sometimes zero, and yet the memory has the emotional weight of a war crime. Why? Because embarrassment is about identity, not outcome. It's not about what you did. It's about what you're doing it says about you. And identity feels enormous, even when the actual event was microscopic. Here's the part that should feel a little freeing. Almost nobody remembers your embarrassing moments except you. There's a phenomenon called the illusion of transparency, the feeling that other people can see your internal state, your nervousness, your panic, much more clearly than they actually can. Gilovich ran experiments on this too. He had people give speeches and rate how visibly nervous they seemed. Speakers thought their nerves were obvious. Observers barely picked up on it. You are a glass house to yourself. You are a brick wall to everyone else. The moment you're replaying tonight, the other people involved either didn't notice, forgot immediately, or if they did remember, they filed it under one time this human did a small human thing. Not under unforgivable, we'll discuss at their funeral. Let's zoom out. Because there's actually a purpose to all of this. Your brain isn't torturing you for fun, it's trying to teach you. Every embarrassing memory it replays comes with an implied lesson. Don't do that again, watch out for that pattern. Adjust next time. This is called error-based learning. Neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz showed how dopamine neurons fire not when you succeed, but when you learn from a mismatch between what you expected and what actually happened. Embarrassment is basically a mismatch alarm. You expected one outcome, reality gave you another, and your brain is now studying the tape. The 2 a.m. replays are your brain's version of watching game film. It's not trying to make you feel bad, it's trying to make you better at being human. It just has terrible timing. Here's a slightly uncomfortable takeaway. If your brain replays the same memory over and over, it usually means there's a lesson you haven't quite absorbed yet. Not a lesson about being flawed. A lesson about accepting that you're a person who does small, awkward things sometimes. Once you accept that, the memory tends to lose its charge. Acceptance is basically the mark as read button for cringe. There's a technique psychologists use for exactly this. It's called cognitive diffusion, from acceptance and commitment therapy. The idea is to observe the thought without wrestling with it. Notice the memory. Label it, there's the wedding toast thing again, and let it float by. You're not suppressing it. You're not arguing with it. You're just refusing to reload it with fresh emotional weight. Over time, the memory stops getting saved back at full strength. Now the funny part. Some researchers argue that people who cringe at their past selves are actually showing a sign of growth. Because to cringe, you have to have moved past the version of you that did the thing. You couldn't cringe at your 7th grade self if you were still your 7th grade self. The very fact that the memory feels embarrassing means you've evolved. You know better now. The cringe is proof of progress. Every 2 a.m. replay is basically your brain showing you a before and after photo of your own growth. It's not humiliation. It's an unflattering yearbook. You just wish it would show it to you at a normal hour. So here's your slightly uncomfortable, slightly freeing takeaway. Your brain remembers your embarrassing moments so vividly because it evolved to keep you socially safe in a tribe that no longer exists. It replays them at 2 a.m. because that's when your defenses are down and your default mode network is bored. The person you're cringing about has forgotten. The stakes you're imagining are inflated. And the fact that you can look back at that moment and wince a little, that means you've grown. Next time your brain hands you a highlight reel at 2 a.m., try this. Don't fight it. Just say quietly, "Yeah, that happened, and I turned out okay," and then roll over. Because your brain will find something else to worry about eventually, probably taxes. If your brain does this too, and let's be honest, it does, stick around. There's a lot more of this weird, useful, slightly unsettling stuff about why you do what you do. Subscribe, tell me your worst 2 a.m. memory in the comments so we can all cringe together, and I'll see you in the next one.